Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of our podcast, which we have now named, by the way. It is called 1,000 Calorie Cheese Sauce. Now, we don't know whether that name's going to be permanent or not, but it is what it is. And we've got a logo coming in that I'm making, and we'll see how it goes. If we come up with a better name, or if you guys come up with a better name, and we can kind of crowdsource this name, that'd be cool. If not, will be known as 1,000 Calorie Cheese Sauce for forevermore until maybe a better one comes along. But I am one of your two main hosts as we will continue forward. My name is Sundown, otherwise known as Mohsin. I have another channel where I discuss or used to discuss manga and stuff like that. Don't really do that so much anymore. And then there's my brother.
Yes, is the brother. I am Saki. I used to make videos back in the day, but not so much anymore. Yeah, I mean, this is just carrying on from what I was saying last week. We just wanted a platform where me and you can talk about films that we've recently watched, or anything else for that matter. Just talk about. I mean, we were talking about how there's not really many films that we want to watch in future. Like, we've been watching quite a few films out in cinema recently, like the new 007 film. Watched Dune. Probably be talking about that next week. But what about in a week that we don't really want to watch something in cinema? We might talk about older films. I know we're thinking about an episode that we've got planned where we want to talk about games that we played throughout the year. I know that you've been playing Valorant quite a bit over this last year, so I want to know more about that because I actually don't know much about Valorant. I've seen you play it a bit in your room, but it'd be nice to know more about it. I mean, the only game that I really played with you online was Overwatch back in the day, but
Yeah.
but but yeah, I mean, today, I mean, you can introduce what we're talking about today. The main topic
Today,
of this
yeah,
podcast.
the main topic of today, and we'll probably diverge as we go along, and kind of just go off on different tangents. But the main topic of the day, or at least we're hoping, is the Matrix. I think it's called Resurrection. So this Matrix for, yeah. So that I think let's first give our overall overarching opinions of how the movie went in terms of a rating and maybe like what we felt with the movie. I think I'll go first. And
Well,
so like,
just to give it a context, right? Me and you both sat down. I mean, I'd watched all three Matrix films. Probably a few years ago, I'd watched the original Matrix, the first one. Years ago, I mean, when we were kids, we grew up with that film. And then the second and third one I watched a little bit later on, a lot later on, in fact, when I was living over in London. So I kind of picked up those films and watched them, and liked the second one, not so much the third one, but I could still consider myself relatively a fan of the series. But you and me sat down and watched them, all three of them, in basically one go.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Just before we went to watch Resurrections, the idea being that you want to know what's going on in the new film.
Yeah, especially because I'd never actually watched two and three. I'd watched like bits and pieces of two, but I'd never watched three in like ever. So I had no idea what was going on in three. Parts of two, like probably a good 40, 50, maybe even 75-ish% of two. I didn't really know what was going on. The classic movie, the first one, I knew every scene back to front. I was like, okay, yeah, I know what this is. But I'd watched it so long ago that I didn't actually know what the story was about. I was just like, oh yeah, bullet time, Neo, the one. It's funny because it's like what's it called, an acronym, or the when they muddle up a word.
Alias. Well, yeah, actually, yes, suppose so. Yeah, you're right.
An
Yeah,
acronym?
I
Yeah,
think
it is
it's.
something like that.
I think
An
yeah,
acronym?
an acronym is usually stands for something. I think you're looking for the
Yeah.
word that means you rearrange the letters,
Yeah, is that called an acronym? I forgot what it was. I don't know what it was.
anagram or
But
something. I can't remember.
anagram, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I knew all that type of stuff, but from the first one, I didn't really know what the story was. Didn't really understand the concept of red pill, blue pill. Didn't understand why the machines were doing what the machines were doing, and the whole battery farm. Literally, like not battery farm in the sense of how we raise chickens, but battery farm in the sense of there's a farm full of humans that act as batteries for the machines. They're literally powering the machines. So I didn't really understand that. I didn't understand when I was younger the significance of like Neo waking up in his slimy pod and pulling out the tube, and then like all those other like wires coming out his body, and he's like, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I
when we were
have no
kids,
idea
we
what that was.
probably watched the original Matrix probably at least a handful of times. And then
Yeah,
ever since then, I think you pretty much um, haven't watched it since we were kids, and
yeah,
I probably watch it once every 3 or 4 years, something like that. It's just something I
yeah,
kept up with. So I had that same experience as you, but a few years ago, like a really good, yeah, a really good few years ago now, like where I was understanding it more from the kind of more like an analytical perspective, I suppose, or a deeper like meaning to the story, really.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, like so that's kind of our background in this, if we're honest. So we went to watch this a week ago now. So I think it was a week after we went to watch Spider-Man. So I kind of went in with, if I'm completely honest with you, with really low expectations. I don't know, like just kind of looking at the trailers, and we've been trying to avoid them like the plague. I mean, my personal opinion on trailers is they're good for hype, but they, for me, we've gone into this before, but they just ruin films for me. They just put in the best scenes at times in the films, and then you're kind of the element is kind of gone from a film. But yeah, I mean, with the Matrix, I watched a trailer, and I don't know, it just was kind of giving me the vibe of a cash in, like a cash grab. So that's kind of the mentality I was going in with, and generally, I kind of go in with a bit of a negative mindset, and then I'm usually surprised, if a film is better than I was expecting, and that's how I like to go in films. I kind of learnt my lesson in the past when you're going in overhyped for a film, and then you know it maybe was like a 7 or a 6 or even like an 8, and you're expecting a 10 out of 10 film, and that feeling just kind of is, kind of sticks with you a little bit. So I kind of go in with negative, kind of what, this is probably not going to be as good as I think it should be, and then I usually end up being surprised. I don't know
Hmm.
how it was for you, but
Well, yeah, I think I went into this movie really really confused as to how they could be another movie. So I think I had low expectations, but for a different set of reasons. This was kind of like the new Star Wars, where I was looking at it with like really suspicious eyes. I was like, I don't think you should exist out here, kind of that kind of thing. So I was like, having just watched the trilogy, and then in Matrix 3, spoiler alert, and you see Matrix 3, you see Neo and Trinity both die, and then you get the reboot of the Matrix, and people like the Architect come back, the Oracle come back, and they're just looking over at the sunset. Sati's there, and you're just like, oh yeah, everything's gonna be cool. And then she's like, "Will Neo come back again?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I think he will." And then we get the kind of trailer to this, which was like, I don't know, I didn't really look at the trailer so much, but I was just kind of thinking, unless this is following the story of, oh, I think he will return, and then it shows how he returns. I was like, but the guy's like, he's really, really in a state of being dead right now, and same with Trinity. So I was like, I don't understand how we're gonna get from there to this. So I had a feeling it was gonna be like some BS reason, and I feel like that's kind of what we got when we went to when we went to see Matrix 4. So I was kind of suspicious of it more than anything, and I low expectations on that front. Where I was like, I
he
don't, I don't know if this is gonna be exactly how it should be.
he recovered from a state of deadness, man. The man can do anything. He technically
Right.
did that in the first film. Um, yeah, I mean, so I suppose we can go into the film now. What we did in the last episode is we did a kind of spoiler-free recap of the film, just a synopsis, if you will. But I don't think we can kind of do that this time around because the kind of premise of the film is a spoiler. So I'm not sure if we can do that or whether it's worth doing one.
Probably not, because the issue with this film is like with Spider-Man, we could recollect like scene by scene what was going on. This
Yeah.
film was a little bit more kind of, it was a huge slow burn to begin with, which is kind of like one scene essentially, split into like two, three main things that happened, and then it goes into like everything's just kind of melds into each other, so it's not really like scene by scene. So I think we'll just go straight into like spoiler.com.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah, like you say, Spider-Man was like, it's part of a trilogy. It's kind of picking up where the story left off. This isn't really picking up where the story left off. It's more of a kind of a few years have passed by. That kind
A
of
few decades have
a
passed by.
few decades. Yeah, forget about a few years. So yeah, kick it off.
Okie dokie. So I think we start off with we start off with the captain of the Nemesis, whose name is Bugs, and she looks cool. I have no idea who the actress is. She had a very, very British accent. So I was like, oh, one of us maybe, unless she's putting on the British accent,
It
in which case not one of
sounded
us.
really like our brethren in Australia, kind of New Zealand kind of thing. I don't know, it might have been British, but
Yeah,
the
she was. I think she
slight
was
twang
British.
to her voice. That it might have been somebody from the Commonwealth, if you know what I mean. But
Yeah, maybe. But
maybe,
I
never
think
know.
she's British. But essentially, it's her looking at what's described as a modal. So kind of like a, it's not part of the main kind of system of the Matrix or something. It's kind of like an addendum almost. I think like a separate room. But in this modal, we get almost like a play-by-play replay of the first scene of Matrix One, which was Trinity on the phone locating where Neo is, and then the agents come for her. So we got that exact thing, but we notice and kind of Bugs notices as well. Hey, wait a second, that's not what Trinity looks like, and there are differences in the scene. It's not exactly like how it was before. So that's kind of the first scene, and really this scene served to bring Morpheus back into the story, which was Agent Smith. I think his name's like Abdul Mateen or something like that. What was it? Abdul Yahya Mateen or something like that. So once again, one of our boys, maybe he's named like one of our boys, but Agent Smith, the black brother, is what, well, he is the Morpheus of this story, and that's kind of what the opening scene I think was there for. It was, oh, by the way, there's this guy. He's the Agent Smith in this modal, but he's not actually Agent Smith in the Matrix, and the purpose he serves is kind of a two-parter, which is he's a Smith Morpheus hybrid, but he is kind of Morpheus reborn.
Yeah, and I think the fact was he was aware of this fact that that he was Morpheus as
Yeah.
well to some degree, and yeah, so he was kind of self-aware, and I think that's where he kind of helps Bugs by kind of taking her aside to like a separate room to escape the Smiths that were kind of after them. So
Oh, well, the agents, not the Smiths, but
oh
yeah,
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 sorry, yeah, the agents, yeah, I forgot, not all of them are Smiths. uh, but yeah, like to escape the agency. What happened? Why did she get noticed by the agents? Was it just the fact that she was there? Like, what happened?
um, yeah, because it's like she was observing at first, and then I think she like I just remember her doing like a superhero landing in front of like three agents, and this is one of the things I was talking to you about
Oh
before.
no, I remember what happened.
What happened?
So the follow they're going through with the scene with Trinity, right? And she goes rooftop.
Yeah,
Remember? And the scene's a bit different because at this point Trinity manages to escape the agents, but she actually
yeah,
gets captured by them. And
yeah,
so the Captain Bugs was like, "What the hell's going on here? This is a bit different."
yeah. I gotta
Um,
save her.
Sorry.
Did she jump in to save her?
Yeah, yeah, it's something like that. Yes, I think she was in the scene. Can't remember whether an agent just snuck up on her or whether like she jumped in. But that's how she
Mm.
gets involved, and you're kind of like, wow, what the what's going on?
Yeah.
Um, you'll be getting a lot of that during this during this
Yeah, yeah.
podcast. There's a
So
lot
I think
yeah,
I
in this
think it was
film. There's a lot of what the hell. But
it was during this scene actually where we got the first dose, and this is kind of more in hindsight. But even when I was watching it, I kind of identified. I was like, "Ooh, I'm not sure how this is gonna go. Like this entire movie, just based off of this, because what we got was in the original three Matrix movies, or the Matrices, if you want to call them that. Um, if there was ever a character besides maybe Neo, who, if let's say if someone fell down and they landed in front of three agents, that would be like, there would be like some really dark, maybe epic music in the back, slow mo, people looking each other in the eye and like, oh shit, this person's about to die real bad. Like they ain't gonna escape this. But in this, we kind of got, it's like once again that Marvel programming has escaped from their universe and entered things like this, where she landed in front of three agents on like her ass or something like that, and she looks up and they're all just kind of staring at her, and she cracks a joke like, "Oh, don't worry about me. I'm just gonna escape right now." And I was like, "Well, what? Like that's not the tonality I've been used to personally in the Matrix films, all three of them. If someone did that in the other three films, it would have been like, ooh, damn, like this is not a good situation." But here she cracked the joke, and then like the chase scene ensued. But I didn't like that part, and then it kind of, I think that's how the rest of the movie, tonality wise, kind of flowed. There was nothing where I was like, oh my god, what's gonna, like, is someone gonna die? Is someone on the fringes of like escaping? There was nothing really like that, I don't think. And I feel like that's how the rest of the movie carried on for me.
Yeah. For me, I didn't get that vibe at that point. Um, I think at that point I just took it for what it is. I thought, okay, she's well, I did kind of feel like, some of the fear factor,
Yeah.
from the character was a bit worn off. Like, like you say, I did kind of get that vibe a little bit, but not to that point where you're saying like, it's a bit Marvelish, making jokes and stuff. I didn't really clock on at that part. What I will say is, at that part, I was just kind of confused with how the story was gonna go. If I'm honest. So I mean the next scene, right? What was that? So that was basically when Morpheus kicks in, right? So Bugs is escaping, and then she gets pulled aside by Morpheus. And it happens to be, for some reason which isn't really explained, Neo's apartment.
Yeah, or Mr. Anderson's
Mr.
apartment.
Anderson, yeah, Thomas Anderson's apartment, aka Neo. So yeah, that was all a bit confusing. I remember the point that I was gonna make actually. So the thing that I got, the thing that I picked up right from that first scene was, I was like, oh, is this gonna be? It was quite fan servicey because they obviously did a recreation of the first scene of the first Matrix movie. The vibe I got was, oh, is this how the film's gonna go? Is it gonna be quite fan servicey and how far they go with it? And that actually ended up being the case, a lot more than I expected, even from that kind of glimmer there. So yeah, I mean, going back to, I suppose, the story, Morpheus takes Bugs aside. They're in Thomas Anderson's apartment. They're looking around. They're like, "Wow, we're in Thomas Anderson's apartment." So yeah, I mean, what happens at that point is, I think Bugs gives. I think she's talking to Morpheus, and he's explaining to her that, yeah, I'm Morpheus. I have his memories, etc.
Yeah.
And eventually, kind of leads to Bugs asking him to take the red or the blue pill.
Yeah.
It was that point, wasn't it? The story.
Yeah. She gives him the red or the blue pill. And
Yeah.
I don't think he had Morpheus's memories like entirely.
Yeah.
I think he just remembered that he was Morpheus, or that he was programmed to be this kind of
he has his own self-awareness, whatever this Morpheus is. It's very much like his own identity. It's not the Morpheus that we know. It's like a new character, but with, like, like you say, with memories of Morpheus.
Yeah.
So yeah, so picking up from there, he takes the red pill.
Red pill, yeah.
Yeah, he takes the red pill, because that's the one that takes you into the real world, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he takes the red pill, and was that the start of the like choppy editing? I can't remember.
No, I think that like there wasn't really too much of that like weird effect kind of thing here.
I can't remember whether this was like the start of it, but yeah, moving on with the story.
Yeah. So from there, essentially we found Morpheus, which means we found the guy that's kind of designed to locate Neo. So I think that's what the whole premise of this first scene was. There's Morpheus here. They wanted to establish who kind of this Bugs lady was in terms of the captain of the Nemesine. And they wanted to establish that Morpheus has been found. Morpheus is the way to locate Neo. And they weren't sure whether Neo was dead or alive. The only way to locate him is in the Matrix, and that would be with Morpheus. So that's kind of the point of the first scene. So then I think we go. Is it to Neo, essentially, who's in the Matrix as Thomas Anderson, and he's now some big time game developer of some sort, or a game designer, I think, as opposed to a game developer. Even though it looked like he was looking at a whole rack of code, so I'm not sure if that's the same thing in this universe. But he's responsible for the design of 3 games, the Matrix trilogy. So what we find out is basically the Matrix has been rebooted in such a way where Neo's been told, and he believes, and he is technically the person who designed the Matrix games, the trilogy games, and those trilogy games in this universe are meant to they're meant to be kind of like based off of dreams or hallucinations. I think they were around dreams that Neo Thomas Anderson has had, and he's made them into games. So essentially, the Matrix is gaslighting Neo into believing that his past life was all a dream, and he's made them into games. And now he's having trouble distinguishing his games from reality, where he thinks like, oh, this might be something I've lived before. He feels like he's lived it before, but everyone like he's seeing a psychotherapist. I'm not sure what they actually call them. Is it psychologist? I think psychologist. And he's
Psychiatrist,
like,
yeah.
yeah, he's like he's giving him techniques to like ground himself, touch things, uh, all that type of stuff. I've forgotten what the list of things is. Usually, it's touch something, divert your attention to something else, think of something, is things like that, to kind of pull him away from this thing where he thinks his games are reality. So that's kind of what we're getting. But we're still getting kind of like little throwbacks here and there. For instance, remember the company he's working at is called Deus Machina, and we know from the previous trilogy, at least even the last film of Matrix 3, that the kind of lord and leader of the machines almost was that big sea urchin looking thing, and he was Deus Ex Machina, or they were Deus Ex Machina. Um, so that's kind of the next scene, really.
Yeah. So
Um,
that's kind of the premise, isn't it? That what you find out is that Neo's been plugged back into the Matrix.
yeah,
Uh, after and yeah, so he's been plugged back in, and then eventually you find out Trinity's been plugged back in as well, and that this is a new Matrix. It's not the Matrix from the first three films. It's like a remodeled, reshuffled, reprogrammed Matrix, where, like you say, they're gaslighting him into believing that all of his memories are fake. He just kind of made them up in his head, and that's pretty much all Neo knows at that point in the film. The only thing, he's even tried to kill himself. That's why he's going to a psychiatrist in the first place, right? He's had episodes where he's tried to commit suicide because his memories are kind of really bothering him, and he thinks he's going crazy. Um, yeah, so I think that is the next scene was, I'm pretty sure, his conversation with his boss.
I think yeah. So little things happen before that. So it's like first we see that Jude guy. So it's kind of like his wingman slash kind of best buddy at this at this company. So there's that guy.
Self-proclaimed.
Yeah.
So
So he's Jude, and he's like some sort of overseer in reality of Neo. But then the other thing is Neo likes to frequent this kind of like coffee place, which I forgot what it was called. I thought it was pretty funny.
did he meet Trinity at that coffee shop after the conversation with the boss? I thought it was after the conversation with the boss.
I can't remember. It doesn't really matter which order it was in,
Yeah.
really, because they don't really influence each other. But essentially, there's this. Should we go with the boss one then first, where he's kind of just like telling him about how they've been forced into making a fourth Matrix
Yeah,
game.
by Warner Brothers
Yeah,
as a shameless self-promotion, but the film's got the shield at the beginning anyway. But so they kind of plug themselves. So Warner Brothers are forcing the company, so Neo's boss, which is this good-looking guy, who's been partnered up with Neo to handle the business side of things, ostensibly. So yeah, that's he has a conversation and says, Neo, we want you to make the fourth game in the series. And he starts getting very kind of nervous about that, and I think that's what sends off some of his triggers, and he has to go see his he eventually goes to see his psychiatrist.
yeah. And one of the things where you kind of mentioned this earlier, that was happening in this scene. So I mentioned earlier, like the psychologist and techniques he's shown Neo in terms of touching his genes to kind of bring his presence back to the present, in the sense of that's the technique he's using to stay grounded. But especially during the scene with this kind of CEO, not even CEO, his partner in this Deus Machina company. who we later find out is actually like Morpheus. He's like the new version of Smith, the new and improved version, and he's not fought Sauron before in the past or anything like that.
That's a
But the
bit of a
thing here,
miss not having Hugo Weaving.
yeah, I
Uh,
wanted I wanted more Hugo Weaving,
yeah, and
but the
Lawrence
thing was,
Fishburne for that matter. But yeah,
yeah, I was really surprised about that. We'll come to that when we like talk a bit more about Morpheus, but I really did miss out on those two being in the movie specifically.
yeah,
Hugo Weaving and Lawrence Fishburne. I thought like, man, if there was anything that was going to make this movie pop, it would have been just having those two, just their presence in the movie would have been enough to like propel it a little bit. I'm not saying the story would have been much better, but in this scene, in this when he's meeting his business partner, we find out first and foremost that they don't have a particularly good relationship. There's this kind of this guy's a very kind of domineering, manipulative type of fellow, whereas Neo or Thomas is more of a kind of laid back, chilled, and kind of nervous type of character. So he feels like he's being trodden on. He feel like he's being walked over by this character, which turns out to be Smith later on. But then the thing was, you mentioned kind of that fan service nostalgia value thing earlier on, and this is where we were getting a lot of it because this Smith character was saying a lot of lines from the first three movies. He at one point he said something like Mr. Anderson and things like this, and you're just like, all right, cool. But then he was saying other things that like Agent Smith said, and that's why Thomas Anderson he was like shitting bricks because he was flashing back to all these things that he remembers about Agent Smith, but Agent Smith wasn't in front of him, so he was just like, what the hell's going on? Which is why he then went to see the kind of his psychologist because first he felt like he didn't have a choice in this new sequel to the game,
yeah,
and but also because he was tripping balls because he remembered all the things this guy in front of him.
yeah. So yeah, I mean the psychiatrist was played by Neil Patrick Harris. I think that's his name.
Yeah.
I think he's in How I Met Your Mother, right? So
Okay.
I personally think he was a good choice. He put,
I liked him. Yeah.
yeah, he was a good choice for the psychiatrist. I think he pulled off like technically both characters that he played in a way. But yeah, that is kind of one of the constants throughout the film that he's trying to get his mind right. He's trying to stop these flashbacks happening. He's trying to convince himself, that the world he's in is the real world and not all these memory / flashbacks that he's getting, which are everything from the first three movies, really. So I think this is the point. I can't remember whether it was before, but at this point, at some point, he goes to the coffee shop and he meets Trinity, who's a married woman. It's a woman that he's seen in this universe many times at this coffee shop, where she's the woman he's based his Trinity in his game that he's created off this woman that he sees occasionally in the coffee shop. So a bit confusing, a bit of a mix up in the words there, but his buddy or whoever the hell he is, what we find out is the handler, Jude, he kind of steps up and decides, what, I'm going to introduce the woman to you, this Tiffany, as she's called in this Matrix, which is quite funny, obviously, because it's a similar name. But she's a married woman. She's got a husband. She's got kids. They look like they kind of recognize each other, but they don't. Is one of those, where you kind of see in movies where there's like a recognition where you're just like, yeah, I have a slight feeling I know who you are, but I just can't put two and two together. Which kind of proves that, Tiffany's or Trinity has been plugged back into the Matrix as well. And, her memories, she's probably in the same position as Neo in terms of, she's probably having these recollections as well, but that wasn't really kind of explored, I don't think.
She does at some point say like, "Oh yeah, I remember this." This like when they meet later on.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's just kind of like, "Do I know you?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Yeah. So I mean, what happens after that? I mean, that wasn't a particularly kind of important scene. I think that was just setting the stage for introducing us to Trinity. So what happens after that?
Yeah. So I think an important point really to mention here is when he goes to see the analyst, they discuss a couple things. So one of them is a really important point. He brings up Neo's previous suicide attempt.
You mean the psychiatrist?
Yeah, yeah, the psychologist. Yeah. So he brings up Neo's favorite. He brings up a previous suicide attempt, which we're like, ooh, like really, is that a suicide? And as he's kind of describing it, we're getting a feel for, ooh, like this. None of this feels right because it felt like he was saying that, oh yeah, you were at an award ceremony of some sort. You went to the top of the building, and you walked off because you thought you could fly or something like that. And we're just like, what's going on there? Like if anything, Neo should be able to fly, and he's once again telling Neo to remember it as a suicide attempt. So essentially, this whole first part of the movie, which I didn't realize it lasted so long, but looking back, I'm just like, it was probably way too long.
Yeah, just to clarify, me and you talked about this. I was suffering. I was
Yeah.
suffering so bad in the first half of the film. I'd say it it was setting the kind of context of what's happened to Neo, but it took well over an hour, I think, or at least an hour to set the concept to make the audience believe that, look, this is the situation that Neo is in, and look how, it's quite, they're trying to make him look ordinary and that kind of thing, but it's just far too long for that setup. And I remember complaining to you after the movie, after we came out, and I was just like, my God, dude, like I was just suffering so much. Just like, come
Yeah.
on, pick up the pace. Like the pacing was
Yeah.
just very strange in the
Yeah,
first
the
half.
pacing was the pacing of this whole part because it took like a solid half of the movie maybe to establish all of this stuff, and it's like, could this have been done better? Because essentially what they were trying to establish was first, this was really the first half of the movie could be like its own separate movie, which is just like Matrix semicolon the gaslighting, because
Yeah,
that's essentially what it was. It was just showing you and trying to, for me, it was trying to show the audience this is the steps that the new Matrix has taken to gaslight Thomas Anderson into believing that all of his lived experiences were actually memories, were actually dreams, or memories of a dream that he's then programmed into some games, some really successful games. It showed us that he seems to be struggling with his identity, so he's seeing a psychologist. He's having struggle. He's struggling differentiating reality between from his memories of this dream. He sees this woman who he's like secretly in love slash crushing on, but it shows that there's some sort of proximity within the matrix of Trinity and Neo. And then the other thing is that this psychologist refers to first that suicide attempt, which once again is another gaslighting. But then he also prescribes Neo with a whole box full of blue pills.
yeah,
Um, so that was kind of where the next scene you were asking about was, that whole compilation where it was like his colleagues talking about the game and what they thought it meant
yeah.
thematically.
So
Like
that was pretty cool. So
yeah,
yeah, I suppose, yeah. Sorry to jump in, but that was pretty much the next scene. So it's just the imagery that was used was quite interesting because fans of the series would understand. But it's like it's kind of like a little in joke. They've given him blue pills. Which he's taking voluntarily because he thinks that's making him better. But obviously, we know the blue pill to represent, you willingly going back into the matrix, and not, and obviously the red pill taking you out, and like making you aware of, the real life, or the real world, as it were. But it was like throughout the whole scene. So it was like what do they call it? Like a montage. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
montage of his daily life, and like he's you see him going into these company meetings, and it's really funny because a lot of the stuff that the people in these meetings are saying was obviously the kind of conversations that fans would have, and just the common like everyday, even like just the common discussions that people would have in our world, and they're like you showing. It was kind of funny. It was like they were making fun out of real people. So that was quite funny. The whole kind of
yeah,
aspect that they were doing there.
yeah. Yeah, that was actually quite interesting. Like the way they made it kind of look like they made it look like a proper design meeting in the sense of what does it mean thematically? What are our customers looking for? They're looking for action. They're looking for grit and stuff like that.
Bullet
By the
time.
way, yeah, bullet time,
That's
bullet time.
bullet time.
Yeah, you know what it needs more of? Bullet time. And then the other guy was like, he was talking about, this is a movie that is talking about fighting the capitalists, and you're just like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. But one of the things that they did was there was an Indian lady who we later find out is Priyanka Chopra. Well, we should have always known it, Priyanka Chopra, just seeing her face. But there's an Indian lady that they keep showing like in this montage. They keep showing her face and then like going away from it, like, oh, by the way, she's there. Remember, she's there. So like so it's not an ass pull later on. There's this thing that you see. We'll come to that. But essentially, yeah. So one of the other things that this first like hour and 10 minutes of the movie focuses on is that Thomas Anderson is willingly kind of staying in the Matrix. He's continually blue pilling himself because he doesn't believe that he's the one, which is kind of what the first Matrix was about. Morpheus getting Neo to believe that he was in actual fact the one before the Oracle said, "Hey, I don't think you are." So what the hell's going on? So that was kind of another theme of this first part of the movie. I think we then moved into kind of where the movie started to pick up a little bit of pace. Was the scene where the Deus Machina building? Why was it being evacuated? Why were people running out of the building again? I've forgotten what it was.
It was because Morpheus and Bugs and them. So Morpheus at this point has taken the red pill, as we mentioned before. He's teamed up with Bugs and her team, her crew on the Nemesine, if that's how you pronounce it. So they're trying to get Neo out because they found him. So they found Neo, in the body of Thomas Anderson. And they're trying to get him out. So Morpheus contacts Neo, meets him in they obviously stage a fire alarm of some sort, and then he tells Neo to meet him inside the bathrooms. Well, I don't know why it's the bathrooms, but
Yeah.
and then he introduces himself to Neo as Morpheus and explains to him that all of his memories are real, etc. I can't remember. I don't think it was at this point that he gives him the choice between the red.
No, he does.
Does he give him the choice?
choice.
And he
Yeah.
outright refuses. He's like, "No, not this time. I'm not taking the red pill."
Yeah,
like
he just freaks out. He
Yeah.
just freaks out because he realizes. Because one of the things that, and I think this might have been alluding to this scene, like as in it might have been alluding to Morpheus. But one of the things we got like a couple times is Neo's looking at like his vertical screen where he's seeing lines of code and stuff like this, and he's being told that there's an intruder in your modal, and the intruder's been purged and stuff like this. And every time the purge would happen, like Jude would walk in or something like that, or like another member of his team would walk in, and you'd be like, okay, like I had no idea, and I still have no idea. I might need a second watch to understand what that intruder thing meant, because I have a feeling that intruder alert was to do with Morpheus or to do with like Bugs and the Nemesine team.
Yeah, I don't think that was overly important. I think that it was literally just a case of Bugs and Morpheus being in the modal. That's what it was.
Yeah, no,
I don't.
but then I was confused because it said at one point it was like intruder purged. So I was like, how could they have been purged if Morpheus just rolls up in the bathroom and he's wearing like the swaggiest outfit he got? I was like, bro,
It
he
might have
hasn't
been
purged.
purges
Like that.
in terms of they might have just got out of the modal.
Possibly,
But yeah, Purge is a bit of a weird. I didn't really pay attention to that bit, if I'm honest. But yeah, like this also brings into the part where in the first film they were talking about how they tried to get the people into the real life quite young, because in this version of Thomas Anderson, he's quite old, and you're kind of set in your ways at that point. You're very unlikely to believe, especially if you're a few decades in, whether your life was a lie basically at this point. So that's why you didn't take the red pill. So
Yeah.
you didn't take the red pill, and then shit goes down essentially, right? So the whole place is getting shot up. I can't remember who it was by. Was it like a SWAT team?
Yeah, it was like a SWAT team. I think there might have been. Was there maybe a couple agents? I don't really remember if there were any agents.
Yeah, I don't think there's
Um,
agents, but this is the point where the boss suddenly, like, has
and
awareness. What?
the boss hasn't organized. He's just
Yeah.
there like, he
Like the
comes
only the only way he has organism is by going Thomas Mr. Anderson, and I'm just like,
yeah,
oh god damn, but yeah, so he gets awareness that he's Agent Smith
yeah,
from the original trilogy. Uh, don't know why, and linking back to what I was saying about fan service, it kind of just felt shoehorned in.
yeah,
Um, and he fights um, Thomas Anderson. He doesn't really fight him. He just kind of tries to kill him.
yeah,
And I can't. This was the confusing part, right? And I think just about the point where he was about to get killed, he just wakes up at his psychiatrist's office again.
yeah. Like I was, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so that whole thing was strange. So yeah, the order of this film. That's the thing. Like what me and you were struggling at the end of the film, and we were saying we're going to talk about this film in the podcast. Is there's so many weird things. So the order of the stuff that happens in order of the film is just very strange. Like at this point in the film, I couldn't tell you if we were talking about that montage about the blue pills, whether that happened after he woke up at the psychiatrist's office or if it was after his first visit. I don't actually
yeah.
know. But I mean, to kind of skip things along, really, that all those
Well,
events happened, and like I say, they're very fan service, and it's for the audience to kind of believe this is what's happening to Neo, and obviously Morpheus is reaching out and saying, "Look, your memories are real," um, and then at this point, he's I think was he trying to come off the blue pills because he was just like, yeah, you know what, this isn't working, and I'm still getting like, and he looked like he was kind of having anxiety attacks and all this business.
yeah. So I think basically once we go past that deja vu kind of montage, that's he comes off the blue pills, and that's when all that gunfight goes down.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
that seemed like I was so unsure of what happened. Like, did he actually fire and kill Neo? And then, like, when he killed Neo, did Neo kind of reboot back at the psychologist's office? Is that how it worked? Or did the psychologist intervene and then, like, bring Neo there and say, hey, like, none of this is real? Because I felt like it was like a reboot, like he actually did die, or that was a memory of a time where he was like almost waking up to become the one,
Yeah,
and the analyst kind of interrupted or the psychologist here interrupted and brought him back to his office and
yeah.
kind
So
of
all that
grounded him
stuff was
again.
unclear, really. And I think this is the point where he's back on the roof of his office building, and he sees bug. What was it? I think it was either his own home apartment at the top floor or
Yeah,
something. He's on the top floor of a building, and then
yeah,
Jude, his boy, he seems to be coming up, and then that's when Bugs gets into contact with him, and she manages to convince him to come with her. Um, I think she offered him the red pill as well, and she manages to
um,
convince him, that come with me, and you'll
yeah,
find out the answers that you're seeking.
yeah.
Uh,
So it was a kind of a replay again. So it was like the last time Bugs met Neo or saw Neo, he was walking off a building in what the psychologist is saying was Neo's suicide attempt. But what we know is it was him trying to fly. So trying to like remember the feeling of being the one or the actuality of being the one. So here we get the same kind of thing where he's on top of that building, he's trying to walk off again, and Bugs pulls him back.
yeah, that was it. Yeah,
Yeah, and then Jude calls him because the Matrix must know somehow. Oh shit! Like he's remembering again, or something like that, or he's getting close to it. So Jude calls in his handler saying, "Oh yeah, we're coming." Basically, whenever something like this is happening, Jude is kind of responsible for pulling him back in, and then it looks like the psychologist is responsible for gaslighting him essentially.
yeah.
So
So
Jude's calling
everybody's
in.
in it together to
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
him within the Matrix.
yeah.
So
So then we get
yeah,
Bugs pulling him back, saying, "Look, cause don't believe that geezer here. He's a sinister program, and he's the one that's kind of pulling you back in, reeling you back in like a fish on a hook." So what we then get is
they teleport to a train in Tokyo.
Was that this part?
Yeah,
Was
I
that?
thought so.
Yeah, actually, it was. She
Yeah,
shows him the bunny tattoo she's got. Once again, a throwback to the first movie
yeah.
where Morpheus or Trinity tells Neo to follow
Follow
the
the
White Rabbit,
White
something like
Rabbit.
that.
Yeah, not sure if it
Yeah,
was completely necessary in this, but maybe it was like the kind of thing that Neo needed at that point to kind of push him over the edge.
yeah.
But
It was cool in the sense of it was like a trigger point for Neo specifically. So I thought that was nice, but I was just wondering in my head, but why does Bugs have a bunny tattoo on her shoulder? Unless she knew she was gonna go in and meet Neo one day and
yeah,
be like, hey, by the way, remember this?
yeah,
It's for you, my homie.
yeah, and just to kind of speed along. So she manages to convince him, and they go onto this. They teleport onto this train, which is in Tokyo, and I think at that point, um, did the agents follow him at this point, or was it a case of they just went into that? Is yeah, what happens at that point? Was that when
They
the
went into that they went into that kind of cinema room where like Morpheus is chilling and he's like, hey, look, these are the events of your life, and they're basically showing um Thomas Anderson what the kind of cutscenes from his game, but telling him actually no, this isn't a game. This is actually what happened in your life.
yeah, yeah. No, I was just thinking like was it after was the cinema room the scene where the like people was it after that the people came alive and tried to attack him and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
and
yeah,
it was
yeah.
after that.
So
Yeah, so they
remember
go into the
the
cinema
cinema
room and
room gets
yeah,
flooded by like SWAT team. Neo's kind of he's taken the red pill, I think, at this point,
yeah,
because Morpheus offers it to him, and then he's tripping out. Everyone's getting prepared to kind of like, okay, Neo's about to awaken in the real world. They
yeah.
gotta find his location. Um,
Yeah, and
and
I
then
suppose that's where, like, once again, we're talking about fan service. They did this too much in the film. They just like a quarter of the film seemed like they were just ripping out cutscenes, well, scenes from the old films, and putting them into and shoehorning them into this film. And
yeah,
that's what they were showing him. And they're like, look, oh, you've got all these memories. They're real, and they were showing them, and there were scenes from the old films. And then they're recreating Morpheus's first meeting with Neo. He's just like, was that absolutely necessary? Like, it doesn't feel like it's serving a purpose in the film. Um, but
I think he even said the same line that Morpheus says, like, when they first meet, and Morpheus is like stood at that wall,
yeah,
and he turns around and he says like a
I think if
two-word
he's
sentence.
yeah, at that point I was like, if he's made the decision to go with Bugs, I think that's all you kind of needed at that point.
Yeah,
Like just take the red pill and be damned. But then I think the point you wanted to get to was the when the psychiatrist steps in. So out of nowhere, that
yeah.
psychiatrist
So
comes in.
mirror on the wall. Yeah,
Yeah, so the classic, take the red pill, and then in the original films, Neo puts his hand into like a mirror, and then the mirror consumes him and goes into him, and then he awakens in the real life, in the real world. But yeah, before that happens, the psychiatrist tries to get involved and pull him back in and saying it's all imaginary, trying to keep him in the Matrix. But that's all down the toilet essentially, because Neo still decides, yep, I'm ready to awaken in the real world. And yeah, it's a fantastic kind of recreation of the first film, and how he awakens in the farm tank thing, the red farm tank, where they're being used as batteries. So all the cables come out, everything is like, it was almost like a one-to-one recreation. And then one of the robots come in and grabbing him by the neck and everything. But what's different is this time is that instead of getting flushed down, a robot comes and grabs him. It was like a ship robot kind of thing, wasn't it? Yeah,
yeah. It was like a giant lava, like
yeah.
a lava,
Grabs him and
lava.
takes him aboard Bugs' crew's ship, the Nemesis. And yeah, once again, like very reminiscent of the first film. They get him out, take out all the kind of ports and stuff, well, most of them, and then like let him build up his strength. And then like it was like they were kind of ripping scenes out from the first film as well, where she's introducing him to everybody on the ship, and the interesting part of this being the relationship that these guys have with robots, because these are mortal enemies in the original trilogy. Robots and humans are not coexisting. All the robots are out to kill the humans, and the humans out to, you know, get rid of the robots. And here you see some of these robots, which I didn't really like the design of them. If I'm honest, they were very kind of cutesy, like robots.
Yeah.
It reminded me, like, I thought I was like watching like Digimon or something in a way. Like, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of like an anime or something that it reminds me of. I can't quite put my finger on it. But like they were like these cutesy like design, like like manta ray type robots and that kind of thing, and it just
Yeah.
looked really out of place in the film.
Yeah.
It looked like
I'm starting to think
Transformers in a
whether
way.
like because I thought the same thing like with that Shibebe one. I think the one that was like a giant, like a cephalopod kind of thing, like a larvae kind of thing. Um, but also I was like, does that follow like a theme? Because I feel like, you know, the machines that we're very used to were the squid-looking ones. I forgot what they call them.
The Sentinels.
Yeah, the Sentinels. So they had like a squid shape, so like an animal that we're very used to on Earth. Deus Machina had the kind of shape of a sea urchin. So I'm just like, is there like a thematic kind of like they're meant to look kind of animally insectoid kind of thing? I was like,
Maybe, maybe,
maybe.
maybe, but they looked very. It was in stark contrast to the previous
Yeah,
films.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I
Because the
found very
Sentinels,
odd.
yeah,
It just looked out of place. I don't know what it was. Can't quite put my finger on it.
yeah,
But yeah, like showing the relationship between how these robots are helping the humans. And I think this is kind of where Neo's kind of um he's kind of saddened in a way, because he's thinking, after the original trilogy, he thought he'd fixed everything. Like, he got killed. Spoiler, in the end of the trilogy, he got killed, as well as Trinity. And he thought everything would be fine. Like, he gave his life away to kind of, you know, keep the city of Zion alive, etc. And he thought, it's all in vain. And Bugs tries to tell him that actually, he has made a huge difference. And I think this is the point where they go to, was it Io? Was that what the city was called?
No, so before this, so you missed a couple things. So there was a kind of cool train scene. You know, once he takes the red pill, once Neo takes the red pill, they go back through the train,
Oh, did they go straight
and
back
we
in?
see. Sorry.
Did they go straight back in? I didn't realize.
Yeah, so they go straight back in, so that because they needed an exit point, remember, and they go through that mirror in the bathroom. Um,
Oh, yes,
so
yes, yes. Okay.
yeah, so they go through there, and that's where we see for the first time this new swarm mode of the Matrix, where everybody present on that train, their eyes suddenly become like the Matrix code. It's like blacked out with the green writing, and they start attacking like all the red pillars, or all the real world. So that was cool. They're all like fighting and stuff like that. But essentially, and actually another thing. So I think this might be the best place to address it. In the original Matrix series, whenever the kind of what they call the operator is talking to his team, we see them like back in their ship, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, operator, you need an exit," all that type of stuff. But in this Matrix, they took the kind of creative freedom and license to whenever Sek, who's the operator for the Nemesis team, is talking, you see him physically in the Matrix with them, so that they don't have to kind of cut away. So I thought, okay, like I wasn't necessarily against that. I just thought, okay, that's a decision that's been made.
Yeah, that was, I think, more for the audience. It wasn't.
Yeah,
I think it's basically the same as just a visual
yeah,
counterpart for us, the audience, because
yeah,
he wasn't actually physically there. He was just in the screen. But for all intents and purposes, if they were to hit him or try to kill him, it would just go straight through him. It was is the same thing as having a hologram there, more or less.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So you're right.
That's
So
that was one.
that whole scene on the train, like you say, was all these people trying to attack these guys. They go into the bathroom of the train, and they use the small mirror in there to get him out of the Matrix and into the real world. So yeah, I forgot about that scene. Yeah, I didn't realize it was then. Like I say, like the order of this film, like there's so many strange things that are happening on in this film, and I think it was a lot of, we'll get to this eventually. A lot of non-memorable moments. which
Yeah.
we've kind of had to like jog our memories. It was like, a lot of like, a lot of the film was kind of suffering through to get to this part of the film, where it starts picking up. Um, so yeah, I mean, going back to the place where I was saying, so he's been introduced to these robots that are helping the humans, and then he's being kind of consoled and saying, actually, you did make a difference. Your
Yeah.
death did make a difference. We the way that we're living in the world is completely different to how it was before you came. So what happens after that?
So actually, even before that, so when he gets to the ship, he's obviously like, he's just been unplugged from the Matrix. He's really frail, and because he's been pumped full of like however many things from the Matrix and from his kind of pod. They're losing him, so they plug him up to the Matrix, and he goes back into that white world. What's it, the construct? And he meets Morpheus there. So this is the first time we see Morpheus in the construct with Neo again. So it's kind of replaying again the first Matrix where Morpheus meets him there, and he's showing him, okay, this is how I kind of regain my memories as more. I know the part I have to play. He explains to Neo how he, and this is the major kind of plot line which you and I can't really grasp yet. So Morpheus explains to Neo how Neo coded or programmed this modal, and he programmed Morpheus, this new kind of reborn version of Morpheus, to come and find him in such a situation, and how it was a clever idea to program this modal. But we're sat there thinking, but when did he do that? Like we're seeing him in this construct, but we have no idea. At least I have no idea when that could have happened. When did Neo have the time? Unless it was like right before he died. Um, or the other option is the Thomas Anderson we're seeing in Matrix 4, the game he's coding, he coded this modal there, and that somehow actually affected the Matrix.
That's the understanding I got from it, but I couldn't just help thinking, but why? Why
Hmm.
would he do that? If because he technically didn't code anything, like the logic was that he's being forced to believe a situation which he wasn't actually a part of. So
Hmm.
why would he have, like he? I'm not sure if he actually coded the Matrix games, or he's just being made to believe that he was. So if he was made to believe that he coded those three Matrix games,
Yeah.
those game worlds, why would he put in Morpheus? That doesn't make sense. Like as like in the form that he is, like because obviously you'd program Morpheus in the games, but I don't think this Morpheus is from the games. If you know what I mean, it's all
Yeah.
confusing. It's all like very Inception-y, like game within a game kind of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah.
But essentially, this construct scene leads to a part two of the famous dojo scene, where we have Neo in his gi versus Morpheus in his gi. But we get the recreation of that where they're on this awesome looking lake in this square dojo kind of thing with a circle window, and we get the fight scene again where Morpheus beats down on Neo, trying to kind of push him into believing he's the one. In this situation, it's actually pushing him to remember he's the one. So we get quite a cool fight. Some of it's more, but a lot of it's Morpheus beating the crap out of Neo. Then it's Neo remembering remembering I know kung fu, all that type of stuff.
I know
Which
kung
ends
fu.
with Neo force pushing, flipping what's his name Morpheus into like the stratosphere, which brings him back, and that's kind of what helps him to recover from what the Matrix did to him and whatever it was feeding him. Um, he remembers he's the one again.
Yeah. Um.
Uh,
Yeah. I suppose that bit. Yeah, it was a bit strange. Like obviously they needed something as a trigger point for him to finally kind of understand who he is and that kind of thing. Um. But it was kind of strange having somebody who isn't Lawrence Fishburne doing that bit, if you know what I
hmm,
mean. But yeah,
yeah.
like yeah. So after that, what happens then?
They go to
Jog my
Io
memory.
after that, so they meet the
What's the city
elderly.
called?
Sorry,
What was the city called?
Io.
Was it actually called Io? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
like in Clash of the Titans, there was that lady called Io.
Yeah.
That's the same
Well,
one.
not only that, like Zion the two letters in the middle are I and O.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so they yeah, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So at this point they go to Io, and the kind of backdrop being that Neo saw Trinity in a pod next to his, which I was just like, why would you put Trinity and Neo next to each other?
Mm.
That wasn't explained, but he saw
No, it
her,
was
and the
explained.
backdrop being that he wants to go back and free her as well, free her mind.
Yeah.
So, but they were like, we can't do that because we'll get spotted by the machines, etc. So
Yeah.
they go to Io and they meet Niobe, who
Yeah.
is from the previous films, but she's a lot older now. She's probably about 5 or 6 decades earlier because,
About 60 years
yeah, I
years
mean the thing
older.
that we didn't discuss is that the amount of time that's passed since Neo was got killed is 60 years.
Mm.
And in that time, so we'll speed things up along because obviously going into this film is going to take quite a long time. So, meets Niobe. She's pissed off that they went into the robot city to get him in the first place. But she's pleased to see that Neo's there. She hasn't seen him in 60 years. And for all intents and purposes, he's the reason why they in Io are doing very well. So they've kind of built technology. They've got defenses in place to keep away from the robots, and they've been a lot more successful than they were in the past. And they also work with robots as well and AI to have a lot more of a modern kind of city because it was quite like prehistoric in a way in the when in Zion where they had some machines and stuff but not like robots, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
So they show the city of Io what they've been working on. They've been working on creating real food like fruit and all that kind of thing. So using programming to create strawberries and just showing the overall development of the city. But
Yeah.
what is clear is what's lacking is they're not bothering to try and free as many minds as they used to.
Yeah.
And that seems like something that has died because as is explained by Niobe, she explained what happened to Morpheus. They believed in the Neo so much that he like because they didn't really know he was dead. I don't think so. They were waiting for him back on Zion, but Zion eventually, and I'm not. It wasn't really explained. I'm not sure if it was like maybe you can tell me. It wasn't really explained how Zion was destroyed.
Yeah. So I think it
You
was
don't just
around
wait for
basically.
somebody and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, oh yeah, crap, I'm exploded, I'm
Yeah.
dead.
So
Uh,
I'm not sure. I can't remember in the movie whether it was they were waiting for Neo, as in like that's the faith they had, or whether they had so much faith in Neo's deal that they think that they at that point they probably would have known that he'd struck with the machines, which was truce. So I think they had faith in that truce, and they were Morpheus was supposedly and the Mandem. Was this mentioned in the movie? They were pissed off that Neo's body hadn't been returned or something like that.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was mentioned in the movie. I can't remember.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like a lot of this stuff was like skimmed over. So they were
No, no,
talking.
that wasn't that wasn't mentioned in the movie. That was the game. It's
Oh
from
right, right,
like
right. You're
yeah,
mixing up things now.
so that's other law. But yeah. So at this point, they were just honoring basically the truce, and I think they were. I'm not sure why they stayed in Zion, but basically Morpheus and the Mandem stayed in Zion. Meanwhile, what would have happened in that time was the Machine Civil War, where basically it looks like the machines had a civil war. Spoiler alert.
Which
And
doesn't which they completely kind of like skimmed over as well. They just mentioned it. Oh yeah, after you got killed, the robots in a fight over resources, they had this civil war, and that was pretty much all we were treated to. And he
Yeah,
was like,
so I,
well,
I wish that was one of my main issues with this part of the movie, which was, hey, don't skip over the machine part. That's the part we like. Like, give us a little bit more flesh around why. Wait, they had a machine war. What was it about? Can you flesh out who it was between? What actually happened? Was it over resources? Was it which particular resources? As in, like, was it for the humans and their battery field, or was it something else? What was it they were fighting for? What were the two sides? What were they called? All that type of stuff. There was no explanation. It's just kind of, you died, Neo, 60 years ago.
yeah,
The machines had a civil war, and now the Oracle's telling us, or back then the Oracle told us a new power's rising, and he took over. And it's like, well, okay, so basically, that little snippet of information was just to inform us that maybe the architect isn't in power anymore. He's not the guy running the show. All right. So then the next part really. So Niobe's there. We had the machine war, and she's told us about that. And then they basically arrest or house arrest Neo, saying, yeah, we don't know what's going on. You're still alive. Oh my god, we're gonna arrest you. So then the Nemesis is like, and their crew's like, nah, cause we're gonna get Neo back and observe Trinity and try and get her out of the Matrix. So that's essentially what they do. They try to free Trinity or Tiffany from the Matrix. And when they go into the Matrix this time, they go to like this compound, and over there they meet exile programs, and they meet our boy Mr. Smith again. One of these exile programs was the Merovingian. If you've watched the other 3 Matrix films, he's in. Is he in 2 and 3, or is he just in 3?
He's in 2 and 3.
Yeah,
I
okay.
believe so.
So
Less
from
in
what I
3.
remember of the Merovingian, he's responsible for basically guarding and like keeping some exile programs from the like view of the Matrix, so they don't get purged. So he brings his boys over, and the Merovingian is pissed. He's an old hermit now. He's swearing and everything. But I remember turning to my brother in the cinema and looking at him saying, I have no idea what the hell the Merovingian is saying.
Yeah, because the guy,
he was just shouting.
He's known for speaking French, but I couldn't tell whether he was speaking French, German, Swahili, or English, or what. I don't know what the hell he was saying, because I don't know if it's the sound design or what, but like he was shouting out like what sounded like profanities and stuff like that, but you can't make out what the hell he was saying, and you're kind of getting a headache listening to the guy, because this is all his voice is whining, his bitching is all over the backdrop of fighting. So they're fighting against the other exile programs, as well as Smith, who engages in a fight with Neo for the most part and batters the crap out of him, essentially. So yeah, pick up from there.
Yeah, so he batters the crap out of him, and then Neo, I think he threatens. Does Smith say something about Trinity again? And that perks up Neo's ears, and he force pushes the hell out of Agent Smith again, and sends him like into the stratosphere.
You get a lot of that in this film, so that seems to be Neo's main power in this part of the Matrix. He's just force pushing people away.
Yeah, actually, so that was actually one of my main issues with Neo in this film. So the whole beatdown from Morpheus is meant to be kind of like, remember you're the one. He remembers he's the one, but the only ability that's available to him is force pushing. Like, he literally just becomes a Jedi without all the like Jedi mind tricks, the lightning, all that. He just literally starts force pushing people. So I was like, really? Like, this is Neo, man. What's he doing? And they kind of make fun of that later on when he tries to fly, and he just jumps and he's like, nope, it's not happening. I was like,
yeah, that one was a bit of a miss with me as well. Like, especially with what they pulled afterwards, what we'll talk about later. So yeah, like he force pushes Smith away. So and what happens?
We get the scene where he goes to where Tiffany is, or Trinity, and he tries to speak to her, basically to convince her to come out of the Matrix with him. And then we get that scene where this was your favorite scene, the bits.
Oh god, yeah. So the thing that comes. Yeah, so the issue that I had throughout this film was it was a style choice where I can't remember what particularly, but there were scenes in the film where they just make movements of the people choppy. It looked like they were running like half the frames they were supposed to be running, and the whole scene would run like that, and it gave me like a massive headache just watching it. So like, it wasn't smooth whatsoever. I'm not sure what it was supposed to represent, like, because the time was like in this particular scene. So the scene that you're talking about is the psychiatrist pops out and he says, I'm the analyst, which is this film's equivalent of the architect from the original trilogy. So he's created this Matrix, and he tells Neo that he's deliberately keeping him and Trinity in the Matrix for reasons which what were the reasons why he did that? Was it just to keep everybody else under, all the other programs under control? What was it?
No, it was something like, in the real world, if Neo and Trinity are kept in like close proximity, not too close, but close enough, I think it was something like they generate a lot of power.
But that was a bunch of bollocks, though. Like, he was actually saying that he was actually the program, that was
Mm.
responsible for reconstructing their bodies,
Yeah.
because obviously they'd been killed, like, and like they had like fatal injuries. So
Yeah.
he was the program who was responsible for reconstructing their real life bodies in
Yeah.
in the real world, and then they were plugged back in, and then they shoehorned in a kind of mechanic where they're like, oh yeah, you when you guys are together, you produce this energy,
Yeah. Basically, it's
and like,
like
what?
individually, Neo and Trinity aren't so special. But together, that's when they're dangerous. Is essentially what they were going for.
Yeah,
And
even though
the
we
whole
know from the first three films, Trinity's just a standard person. Like, she's strong as the real humans go, as the Red Pillars go.
yeah.
But she's like, good, got a smart mind and all that business. But yeah, all of a sudden she's like almost equivalent to Neo in essence, which we'll talk about more
Well,
later.
she's important. Yeah, she's important to his abilities for
Yeah,
some reason.
exactly. For somehow,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
and so
yeah,
the analyst basically the reason why they were like together. The analyst he says something around, oh yeah, one thing that I did which the rest of the guys didn't do, like the architect, was I actually analyzed human emotion and stuff like that. And what I realized was like the Matrix works better when humans are miserable or some shit like that. So he kept Neo and Trinity close to each other, but not too close because apparently they generated a lot of power. I'm like, but what about the other like 8.5 billion people on the planet? Do they not generate enough power
not only
compared to
that, but
these?
that
I don't know.
that
Some
almost
weird
keeps
stuff like that.
in line with this, with the same theme that the architect had. Remember, because he said we made the Matrix a perfect world, and it went to crap because people aren't perfect,
Yeah,
and they didn't want perfect. They wanted a flawed world, and I was like,
yeah,
well, that's kind of what you did here. So it's basically the same Matrix. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, like then he was like threatening Neo, saying that I could kill Trinity. But what I was thinking was, I was like, well, that kind of goes. That means your plan goes toilet, go straight to the toilet, because the whole point of his plan is to keep them two together in order to create this energy. So if you kill her, then that's your plan gone to the toilet, essentially.
yeah, exactly. And
So
the weird thing was, after having explained all of that to Neo, Neo doesn't call him out on it. I mean, this is the part where they had that really choppy
yeah,
uh, effect
yeah,
where the analyst was like walking in bullet time, and they did explain, but I didn't understand it, and I didn't quite hear it right. I don't think I need to watch it again. But why Neo couldn't move in bullet time, but the analyst could, and I was like, well, what?
yeah.
But
Not only that, like
yes,
the analyst, this analyst guy essentially tells Neo, "You have all the leverage, mate."
yeah,
Yeah, and he
yeah,
makes use of that later on. So what happens after that scene? Because that scene went on a bit longer than it should have as well, if I'm honest.
yeah. So I think after that they go back to Io, and
Someone
this is
managed to
where
escape the analyst, right?
they escape the analyst and they have to leave Trinity there.
Yeah.
So they go back to Io, and I think this is where Bugs is stripped of her captaincy, and then we get introduced to Priyanka Chopra's character, which is that
Little
that
Indian
machine
girl.
called
Yeah.
yeah that machine called Kujaku.
Oh right. Yeah.
So we follow Kujaku. They go into the Matrix again, or some part of the Matrix, and we meet Priyanka Chopra, who is Sati from the previous film. She hasn't aged 60 years, mind you. She's aged like 25 maybe years older than she was, and she talks about how her father was actually responsible for the pods that for reconstructing Neo and Trinity, and basically she plans with Neo and Niobe and the rest of the crew how to go and free Trinity from the Matrix. That's essentially what happens here.
Yeah. So that once again was a bit more shoehorning in. As far as we knew, like, her dad was an exile program of sorts.
Mm.
He was being helped by the Merovingian to escape, but like there was, he didn't. Why would he have anything to do with the reconstruction of the pods when he had escaped? Uh,
I don't know.
but that's beside the point. That there's many points like this throughout the film where we were just kind of confused. So yeah,
Yeah,
they create a plan to break out Trinity, which seems like a convoluted plan.
yeah,
Where they're doing stuff in the real world in her kind of battery pod thing, where they're like half taking out her plug that she's got in the back of her neck, and they're not really. And then they're doing all this swapping body stuff. I don't know what was going on, but
Yeah,
essentially,
it's something with bugs, yeah,
yeah,
and
they
then like the
plug
bugs
get
is
plugged into the
phasing out,
Matrix.
phasing in.
Yeah, they get plugged back into the Matrix. And Neo and the whole crew, and even members of other crews that are willing to help out, and they go into the Matrix and they meet with the analyst.
Yeah,
And Matrix and Neo basically says, "I'm gonna kill myself if you don't give me Trinity." And essentially, he's like, "Okay, I'll make you a deal. I'll bring Trinity here. You ask her if she wants to come with you. She says no. You do one. If
yeah.
yes, you sign up to get plugged back in. So both Neo and Trinity would get plugged back in again, and then everything would be back to how it was before." Um, but yeah, like so, Trinity, or in this one, Tiffany, she comes out, talks with him. She obviously thinks she has like a husband and sons and all that, because that's what she's been, gaslighted to believe. And there's like a massive like police SWAT team there surrounding them. And after the whole conversation, she decides, no, I can't take the red pill. I can't release. So as she's walking away, obviously the analyst is trying to take care of Neo and all that, saying that look, see, she doesn't want to come back with you. And then all of a sudden, she somehow remembers, after seeing him in distress, she suddenly remembers that she's not Tiffany and that she's Trinity.
Hmm.
Yeah, so go from there, really.
Yeah, so I thought that was a bit weird. I was like, you had this. You're walking away. You see him being pinned down. You didn't even see him like. It would have been cool if she saw like a reflection of the first movie. Like I don't want the callbacks, but this would have been a really cool callback if she'd seen him being shot, like how Agent Smith shot him or something like that. And then she kind of remembered and she was like, "I'm not Tiffany." That would have been sick. That would have been cool. And if we got kind of a replay of that, but then again, it would have been exactly like the first. But that really annoyed me, like to an extent, where I was like, she's walking away. She's basically made her decision, like, nah, I'm not gonna, I'm blue pilling. I'm not gonna leave the Matrix. And then she turns around and just goes, seeing him just being pinned down in what looked like a very loving manner. Actually, he seemed to be fine.
Relatively.
Uh, yeah. So, she just turns around. And she's like, you know what? I'm not Tiffany. I hate that name. And then she goes out. And she starts dishing out the pain, which was cool. But I was just like, the way she kind of accepted that she was kind of, she wanted to break free was really weird. And then we got that kind of confusing scene where she's being pulled out. Kujaku puts her, or Priyanka Chopra puts her cable back into her neck, and then she puts the other one into Bugs, because
That
apparently
was
Bugs
so
and Trinity are
confusing.
really similar for some reason.
That's
And
so
then they're kind
confusing.
of phasing in and out of existence. And then Trinity stabilizes, and everyone's fighting, everyone's shooting and stuff like this. We go bullet time again, and I think the analyst made mention of he placed some sort of lock on Thomas Anderson so that he can't, on Neo, so that he can't move during bullet time. But I'm like, if you're so powerful, you could probably have placed a whole bunch of other different locks on Neo, and he would be useless. But that same lock wasn't placed on Agent Smith,
Yeah,
who just walks into the scene and starts beating the crap out of the analyst.
and says, "I'm
Uh,
teaming up with you now, Neo. I'm not going to explain to you why, other than
yeah,
I think the kind of weak explanation was given that I want to be free. Like I was
yeah.
free
He
to,
wants to be free. He doesn't want there to be like anyone above him. He doesn't want to be
yeah,
ruled by anything. And the analyst is basically like the architect part two.
yeah.
So he's being ruled over by this program.
So, but I thought that explanation was kind of weak, and the fact that he was able to overrule it kind of weak as well. Because, I mean, for starters, me and you talked about it. Like, we don't even know why the hell he even exists in this film. He was destroyed.
Yeah, he was deleted.
Yeah.
He was,
So,
every instance of him.
yeah, he's completely gone. And there was no reason for the Matrix to reconstruct him. There was a reason to reconstruct Neo and Trinity, but yeah,
Yeah.
like he just pops out of nowhere. Yeah, to speed things along, really, there's like a massive bike chase and car chase.
Where you missed the
Where?
cringy part. So that whole scene was basically just to show Trinity and Neo touching,
Oh
and then that
yes.
explosion.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was
So
the
the
energy they were
first
showing.
scene of it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when they touch each other, a massive explosion happens, and after that, they decide to try and get out. But as it turns out, the analyst has controls, just like he did on that train scene, on all the kind of humans in the Matrix, and they end up being just massive kamikaze bombs. They just drop out of buildings, and so there's a massive chase scene, which was really cool. They just going on this motorbike, both of them. Trinity driving, and all these people just coming out, just kamikazing on them, and it's really cool. Like it was like watching a zombie film almost. Like
Yeah, that was pretty
watching
cool,
all these zombies kind of attacking all these red pillars.
yeah.
Then what happens straight after that? So
So Mans are dive bombing. Neo and Trinity are trying to escape, so they go up a flight of stairs. They apparently these Mans have keys to every freaking door in these buildings.
yeah,
So they go to the top of the building where they're met by those helicopters. Remember, they're getting fired at, and once again, the only powers Neo seems to be capable of displaying are his force abilities. So he's
blocking bullets.
He's force bubbling these bullets away from them. He force pushes a missile that one of them shoots at another helicopter, and then they have to make the decision. They run to the edge of a building, right at the top of the building. They have to make a decision to jump, basically to escape these helicopters. And now I asked you this before as well. I was like, there was a scene in the first Matrix film where Morpheus jumps from one building to another. He makes a huge leap and he lands, and that's because of the kind of their understanding of the Matrix. They're kind of bending it, but not in the same way the one can bend it. The Matrix. But in this film, for some reason, they seem incapable of that. Like they can't make that same style of jump that Morpheus made. So I'm just like, so what was that Morpheus jump? Was it a training ground, like specific rules, or was that in the Matrix? So I was confused about that. Why didn't they try that instead of what they did try, which was to fly with Neo?
Yeah, I mean, throughout that thing, I was like, maybe they were trying to make a point that they made this new Matrix and they managed to somehow overcome the anomaly.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case because it was very selective on what powers he actually had. And I think this is the point where the ass pullery comes out. So they both jump off the building. The theory being Neo was like, you know what? I'll put myself in a position where I have to do my massive jump or fly.
Yeah.
But you see him dropping, and they're both dropping together. But then suddenly you see Trinity's flying. I'm gonna get so confused over that, dude. Trinity. So she's flying. So all of a sudden, the biggest ass pull of the movie is that she's got the same powers as the one. And at this point, like I know you had like a mind blow moment, like what the hell? At this point, I was so kind of done with the film. I wasn't as surprised by that. I was so kind of like disappointed with the film to that point. I mean, it picked up a little bit for me with the quite a bit, the scene where all the people are dropping and kamikazeing them and all that. Yeah. But I when I saw that, I was just like, oh, come on, dude, seriously?
Yeah.
Like, but so to make a long story short, she's got the one's powers. They managed to escape. I'm pretty sure that's all that happens. They just fly off on what looks like somebody just being suspended by a wire or something, like an invisible wire. It wasn't even flying really, but they managed to escape. And then kind of like it comes to the ending of the film where they go back into the Matrix and they basically threaten the analyst, saying that, yeah, we're going to completely reconstruct your world. And yeah, that was like
basically they take control of the Matrix from him. Yeah. And they threaten him with like, if you ever try to come at us again, we're gonna clap you. So that's essentially how it ends.
With the cover of Rage Against the Machine song, I'm pretty sure at the end as well.
Oh my god!
And I was like, no, I know it was a cool throwback, but no, just put on the original song. The original song was cool.
Like a Rage Against the Machine song, good stuff. Like let's do that. Just put it in there. We're good. But the fact that it was a cover, it was an okay. Like the attempt at the cover was good, but I was like, but why have a cover, bro? Just put in a Rage Against the Machine
I don't know.
Song.
It just sounded strange. But yeah, I mean, that is a very elongated kind of recap of the film. I mean, we've thrown in some of our feelings. I mean, my general conclusion of the film was I was quite disappointed in it. It just felt like, the way I explained it to you is it felt like a kind of a special, I remember they did like a Red Dwarf special where they were like back on Earth. And it was like that. They spent far too much time kind of on the setup, as I mentioned before, and not enough time on some of the backstory elements which they should have, like really fleshed out, and then introduce bits into the story that didn't really make sense. The bits of mechanics that were out of place. You know, plot holes everywhere. The story itself, in like, you know, if you look at it, like, you know, from out, you know, from an overarching point of view, there wasn't much substance to the story at all. The
Mm.
effects were good for the most part, but it was like I was saying, like you rarely see a film these days with bad special effects, especially with a budget
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, it was a bit. It was off key. I would say the film for me
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah. I remember watching it and I kind of switch off from like analyzing a movie when I'm watching it. So I kind of just get lost in the movie for the most part. But I remember stepping out and like as soon as I step out of a movie, I'm thinking about it and stuff like that. And I just remember thinking that first half of the movie where they were introducing, showing how Neo's still in the Matrix, being gas lit, I suppose. How Trinity's the same. You know, the jobs of Jude, the analyst, the CEO, the partner of this business, which is Agent Smith. That took way too long. And then after that, like some of the fight scenes were cool and things like that. But I feel like the plot itself hadn't, like, it feels to me like it hasn't really been thought out. And for some reason they really wanted to, and they did shoehorn in this idea of Neo's abilities being reliant on Trinity, possible proximity between them, and how that's something that triggers his abilities. As if this was like some sort of anime, as if Karma Power. This was pure fairy tale. This movie, but I feel like that ruined. Like that wasn't something cool for me. That ruined the movie for me. As if like the first part wasn't it wasn't already like it wasn't already quite bad. This ruined it even more because I was like, the whole point of Trinity, the whole point of Morpheus, and like especially those two characters classically, has been they are so cool because they're not the one. That's how it was for me. Trinity is a badass. Morpheus is a badass because they're not the one. They don't have these abilities. They don't have anything besides their wit, their skills, all that type of stuff. They are awesome because, like, obviously they have a cool relationship with Neo, but they're not the one. So then, what do they do in this movie? They ruin Trinity by making her have the same abilities as. I was
Yeah,
like,
and yeah,
but why?
and they
Why would
didn't
you
really
ruin her character?
explain like Morpheus in a way. Is that they were like, oh yeah, he's a program. He's not a person now. He's like this
Yeah,
program in the and you're just like, what? Like that was all like very confusing. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean that's pretty much all I got to say about the film. If I'm honest, it was like it seemed like it was more of an attempt at like I said at the beginning, like a cash grab. Like we'll rehash scenes from the original movies, and even just, you know, straight up. A lot of times in the movie, just straight up show the original scenes from the original movie, whether it's by, you know, showing it on a projector or something, and just kind of take advantage of, you know, fans of the series in a way.
yeah,
Which, like I say, I'm not like a massive fan, but like I'm fan enough where, like, you know, I really like watching the, you know, the original trilogy of films. This one, I had to kind of take a step back and say, you know what, it's going to be a struggle for me to rewatch this film. Um, you know, when it like eventually comes out on Blu-ray, etc.
yeah. So we've gone through all the issues that we did have with it, but I think the main, obviously, besides the length of it and the like the I think really weak kind of story,
It was a
the
long
main
film.
issue was the whole Trinity. They didn't like just throw it in at the end. Kind of from halfway through, they were showing that their bond was kind of very special to Neo in the sense of that's where some of his energy, some of his powers were coming from. He needed that bond for some reason. But that whole reveal at the end where she becomes basically the one but number two, so it's not like the two.
Yeah,
I'm like that that really destroyed the entire movie for me. So like it took it from like a what would have been maybe a 6 out of 10 down to like a 5 or 4 out of 10. Um, because
yeah,
I just thought you've ruined one of your better characters by doing something which you think might have been cool, but it just really wasn't. It was the opposite, complete opposite. So I didn't understand, and I still don't understand why they needed to do that. It was just It
Yeah.
wasn't necessary at all.
You know me, and historically, you know, when a film series or a show or something, they set up a character. And you know, I had this. I always bring it up because it's like the biggest kind of the one that was most egregious was Star Wars. They set up in 3 films the character of Luke Skywalker, and so in this, they set up the characters all these people in 3 Matrix films, and then when you got a 4th film, and they've got a big part of their character or you know the abilities, etc., and you kind of completely destroy that in a way. I have a huge issue when they do that, you know, like with Luke Skywalker being like, you know,
Yeah.
ultimate pessimist, you know, that kind of thing. And in this case, you know, oh yeah, we're going to, you know, do a complete 180. We're not going to have just this one guy who's the anomaly, the one. We're just going to make 2 of them now.
Yeah, because then
But
it's like, where do you draw the line? Are there going to be a whole bunch of different anomalies now?
yeah, it's
And
yeah, they do that in a lot of series recently. I had a issue with Dragon Ball Super when they did that as well. That you know, you got a whole bunch of characters that you've known for decades at this point, and we're just gonna carry on giving them ultimate superpowers every week. We'll give them a new power. You know, it's all right.
yeah,
You know, but yeah, I suppose that's it for today's episode. If I'm
yeah.
honest,
I suppose
nothing.
one other issue that I had was, and this is like a really quick point, is just the tonal shift of the movie, and how I don't think anybody, because the original 3 movies were kind of dark, kind of gritty,
Yeah,
but this one, like, in where there were opportunities for the good guys to take casualties or to be like severely damaged or anything like that, I don't think anybody. Can you recall anybody that died in this movie?
no, and there's a lot of people saying that this was like a dark version. I can't remember what was this. I think they were saying that, oh, this is a pretty dark version of the Matrix, and I was just like, I
I
don't
don't
know what
think this
version of the
was,
Matrix you were
because like
watching.
in the first Matrix, everyone dies.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And
Everyone dies.
second film, I don't recall, and then third film, like literally everybody dies, like you know, of
Yeah,
importance.
literally, like everyone dies.
Yeah, like well, you know, apart from I think Naomi and like you know, some of the leaders in Zion.
Yeah, yeah,
But like you know the 2 ones that you cared about the most, Trinity and Neo, they died. You know, who else is left?
yeah. And they only died for 60 years. Which, by the way, the whole reconstruction, that was bullshit. Like,
Yeah,
that was complete bullshit.
yeah, I don't know what the hell that was
But,
all about.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean that's it for today's episode. I think next week I don't know what we're going to be talking about next week. I know that the Kingsman is out, but I don't think you and me are invested in that film series to go and watch it. So I think
yeah,
next week we're either going to be talking about an older film, or we might actually talk about some video games that we played in 2021. Uh, just to just have a general discussion. I haven't really talked about what you've been playing, and you haven't really found out from me what I've played. Even though it's been a bit of a down year for gaming, for me. But yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Catch up with you guys next time on 1000 Calorie Cheese Sauce.